Hey, I have to thank Joel Swagman for pointing me to a YouTube copy of The Wild Ones, a 1953, the 1953 biker outlaw movie starring Marlon Brando. This is the famous movie where they ask oh, why are you always why are you always rebelling stuff against? Like what are you rebelling against? And he says like, what do you got? And you know that's the famous line, which is, as Joel said, a kind of a toss off line. And he was talking about it and just like, oh, that was interesting. I remember watching the movie, so I went and just kind of intending to just watch a little bit of it, and I started it and I just watched the entire thing through over the course of the day, and yeah, it was quite striking of a movie. In some ways, it feels like it's a 1950s movie that's it's like it's a 70s movie, but it's like in the 1950s. It feels very ahead of its time in a lot of ways because it's very much uh, an anti-hero movie where uh, you know Brando's Johnny is not a sympathetic. The Wild One is not a sympathetic guy. He is troubled. Uh, he is kind of he's immature. He's like there's a point in the movie where he gets beaten by a bunch of irate townspeople, and he just has a moment where he's like a hurt little boy, which I think is really striking in a figure like Brando, who is this kind of big, brooding kind of hunk of a guy. He doesn't say much throughout the movie. He's violent. He assaults the his co-lead at a certain point. Um, but his performance in that moment, he is able to give this he's able to give this performance where you see him as it's like, oh shit, you can see kind of the hurt, uncared for, vulnerable child underneath all of this, and that's kind of striking. And there's something in this that I feel like it really points to what's going to happen, which is the kind of the button down 50s, um, you know, the generation that went to war and was freaking, men going to war and being traumatized by that, and having this kind of rigid, kind of very gendered masculinity, very kind of rigid roles, like, I am the breadwinner, I do not express emotions, I am tough. And there's going to be kind of a breaking down of that. And it's something that's going to unleash a lot of unbridled rage and emotion and energy in the society, which is going to be both generative, very creative, and bring a lot. The '60s, the '70s, but is also going to scare the shit out of the squares, as it was, and you can see kind of both sides being portrayed in this. Probably more from the side of the squares, kind of looking at this new figure and being like kind of in awe of him, being um, turned on by him. There's a scene of the young woman who is besotted by Johnny riding the motorcycle, riding behind him on the motorcycle, which is the probably the most erotic scene in the entire movie. Is just her kind of losing herself, um, straddled behind him, which is just like, oh. So yeah. I mean, Joel made a point of how, you know, comparing him and Brando with James Dean, and how James Dean died early, so he didn't have all this stuff accrete to him afterwards. Whereas Brando, it's hard to kind of look at Brando and not see big, overweight Superman, or even The Heart of Darkness, or The Godfather, or The Freshman. all these movies, after, or just his odd Don Juan DeMarco with Johnny Depp, and it's hard not to see him without all that accretion on him. Just like I would say a modern day example of that would be Johnny Depp and River Phoenix. River Phoenix dying at kind of at kind of his at his at his peak of kind of hunkiness, and at the kind of the peak of like, oh, so much potential and stuff like that. Whereas someone like Johnny Depp, you know, amazing body of work, but kind of slipping into kind of whatever drug use, and kind of doing work for gigs and getting kind of coke through yet another Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and then all the stuff with Amber Heard, whatever way you fall upon that. But you can see that there's more and more stuff accreting there, which is not great. And yeah, yeah, you see thing. And I mean, you could probably argue far more of a significance for someone, a figure like Marlon Brando, who brings the naturalism, the rawness of the method to his acting, and the kind of cultural import of a significant change. Whereas Johnny Depp is, as much as he's Johnny Depp, you know, an artiste, maybe doesn't have that seismic cultural shift happening within the industry of within movies and within wider culture. I don't know if you could make the same argument for him, but yeah, yeah. So it was. Thank you, Joel. Thank you for prompting me to go and watch that. Yeah, yeah. All right, I'll leave it there. More videos later.